Lady Furina.
I plead not guilty. How can I be guilty? There is no way that I, Focalor, otherwise known as Furina de Fontaine, a member of the Seven and the Regina of all waters, kindreds, peoples, and laws of Fontaine, could be anything other than your true Archon.
Yeah, even though Lady Furina can be rather eccentric, isn't it going too far to doubt her very identity?
Yeah, I've never questioned her identity either. Sure, Lady Furina can be super irresponsible.
I have cause to believe that common sense will prevail in this case. Many of the members of the audience have known me as the Hydro Archon ever since they were born. See? Even the Oratrice has... If you wish to drop the case, I can promise you as the God of Justice that you will not have to face trial for making a false accusation. We will treat everything that's happened as a...
An argument with near impossible odds, huh? You have to not only refute Furina...
Well, I tried to give you the chance to surrender. If you must persist, then let me ask. If you believe I'm not the Archon, then what manner of being do you think I am? And if I was not the Archon, then how did I manage to live for over 500 years?
First of all, you may be a member of another long-lived race, which would allow you to naturally possess an extended lifespan. And second of all, even if that wasn't the case, there could be other ways to extend your life.
Who gave you that idea? Was it the knave? You'd sink so low as to use a harbinger's words against me.
A curse? I once thought it possible that the aura of an Archon might naturally resemble a type of curse. But in light of this claim, perhaps what I sensed was not your divinity, but a curse after all.
Nevelet sensed it too, huh?
Lady Furina is actually a human?
Well, it is true that it's extremely difficult to tell humans and gods apart just by looking at them. It's not impossible.
Well, don't start celebrating too early now. Even if I have been carrying a curse like you said, how does that prove that I am merely a human being? Besides, everyone knows that the main difference between a human and a god is the possession of authority. Gods can do what humans cannot. That's why they're worshipped as gods. For centuries, manifestations of my authority have served the nation of Fontaine. One need only to turn their eyes towards the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinal in this very opera house, or consider the endemitium that is used in every aspect of life.
That doesn't sound right. Paimon doesn't think... You tried to reference the Oratrice, but weren't you as confused as all the rest of us when the Oratrice declared Child to be guilty without any proof? Otherwise, you should have come up with a good explanation for that by now.
Didn't I make myself clear at the time? The decisions of the gods are naturally difficult for humans to comprehend. There is no need to provide an explanation.
Lady Furina, I believe a reminder of your current circumstances is in order. While the court is in session, the principles of justice and the law must come before all else. While you are an Archon, you will prove yourself unable to defend against the prosecution's charges if you continue to withhold vital information against the rules of the court.
I never thought. you'd use that kind of rhetoric against me.
That was no trick of rhetoric, Lady Furina. I've merely reiterated the rules of the court. Rules that all should respect and follow.
So, you neither knew why Child was declared guilty, nor did you understand the structure and operations of the Oratrice. Instead of having been created by you, the manifestations of authority you mentioned have been made by the real Hydro Archon, haven't they?
The real Hydro Archon? Well, now you're really losing me. It is true that I did not know why the Oratrice gave out a guilty verdict that day, but the Oratrice handed out that verdict unilaterally, and it has been operating independently ever since it was first created. You can't argue that just because a divine creation is flawed, that the god behind it must also be no god at all.
She's still throwing out all kinds of excuses. Seems like she's confident that we won't be able to produce proof that she has no—
My power as an Archon. There are many ordinary citizens in the audience. How can I just carelessly demonstrate the formidable power of an Archon?
If that poses a concern, I'm prepared to extend my protection to the audience.
You don't need to go that far.
Aren't you the Hydro Archon? Or is it that you can't even wield the power of Hydro, much less the authority of a god?
Indemnitium! Yes! It's all because of Indemnitium! All Archons derive their power from the faith of the people, and I've converted the people's faith in justice into Indemnitium! Thus did I give up all of my divine power to provide everyone with energy for their daily lives. Have you ever seen a more
Isn't that a huge stretch?
Yeah, no matter how generous an Archon can be, how could they give up all their power? Can a god—
It seems like nobody's buying Furina's excuse.
Hey, come now, everyone. Please don't stare at me as if I was a liar. I'm still the same Furina you knew, right? The one that you loved. Shouldn't you want to believe in me, please? You've got to believe—
If what the prosecutor said is true, she really has committed a grave offense.
Did she deceive all of us? And all of our parents and grandparents too? And all of our ancestors? Ever since they were born?
Enough. That's enough. Tell me then, if I'm not the real Hydro Archon, then who is? If you have no evidence of another Hydro Archon's existence, nor can you find anyone who can back up their claim to be such, then what grounds have you to say that I'm not actually the real deal?
Wow, she came up with yet another argument. How can we refute her now? Seems like she really doesn't want to give up. That doesn't... that doesn't sound... It has been established that all Fontainians can dissolve in water from the primordial sea. And
Since you insist on claiming to be a god and not a human, then there's a method that you can use right here and now to eliminate all suspicions of you being the latter.
Miss Navia, please apply to serve as a temporary attorney for the prosecution before addressing the court. Though you act in partnership with the prosecutor, you must still adhere to proper procedures.
Super sorry, Monsieur Chief Justice. I swear this really will be the last. Now, I've brought some seawater from Poisson. As everyone knows, a massive flood struck the area not long ago. including those of some of my closest friends. So, Miss Furina, would you dare to touch some of the seawater? If we are to believe that you are indeed the real Hydro Archon, touching the seawater would have no effect on you. All it should do is strengthen your case. But if you don't dare to touch it, then we would have basically proved the reverse. Oh, and I must remind you that after the disaster at Poisson, nobody wants to see any more people dissolve. I do hope you'll act prudently and choose the simpler path of admitting guilt.
Navia from the Spina di Rasula. The Spina has governed Poisson for many years. I guess her suggestion is valid.
If Lady Furina is indeed just a human, she's probably Fontainian like all the rest of us. Would she really dare to try?
Lady Furina, this test has been unilaterally proposed by the prosecution. As it falls outside the realm of standard court proceedings, you possess the right to decline participation.
Well, of course he had to tell her that. But refusing to participate is basically the same as a confession of guilt.
She's just staring at the water without saying a single word. It really does seem like she's quite terrified of it.
What's going on? Is she really planning to... That's not what we thought.
Due to the inherent risk of the test, Lady Furina, you may...
What?
Hey!
I'm fine! Look at me, everyone! My hand is still here! I haven't been dissolved! Will you believe me now? I really am your Archon! I'm nothing like a normal human who would fall apart as soon as they touch this water! Really? Was this not the most obvious thing in the world?
Miss Siegewin? If you're present, Miss Siegewin, please come forward and attend to the defendant.
Siegewin?
Don't be nervous. It'll just take a few seconds. Let me see. That should be enough.
Please announce the results of your evaluation to the court, Miss Siegewin.
As everyone doubtlessly saw, Miss Furina was displaying symptoms of hyperventilation and flushed skin. These indicate that she was experiencing the adverse effects of exposure to primordial seawater. The extent to which she was affected is the same as other humans when exposed to primordial seawater of a similar concentration.
Thank you, Miss Siegewin. Lady Furina, you may return to the defendant's stand.
Oh, wait. What did she just say? I didn't get dissolved. Shouldn't that be enough to prove my innocence?
Well, considering your tendency to run from your problems, we did originally prepare a direct sample of the seawater around Poisson. However, after extensive discussion, we exchanged it for a sample that is not concentrated enough to dissolve an actual human. After all, on the off chance that something entirely unexpected might occur, we don't want anyone else to lose their life to the sea.
Yeah, so out of regard for Furina's life, you secured a low-concentration sample and asked the head nurse to serve as an expert witness. It's a great thing that the direct sample wasn't actually you.
I can't believe... You... Listen to me, everyone! Please don't give me such cold and disdainful look! Think about about it! How can you conclusively prove that an Archon can't also be affected by the primordial seawater? Also, if I was really just a human, why would I dare to just put my hand in that... Please, everyone, anyone, just listen to me! I swear, I really am your Archon!
I don't think anything she says at this point will sway anyone. The odds are just too stacked against her now.
With all the things that have been said, Paimon doesn't think there's any way left.
I believe the time for arguments and presentation of evidence has come to an end. If there are no objections, we will move on to the final judgment.
I don't think anything she says at this point will sway anyone. She's too stacked against her now.
In my capacity as Chief Justice, I shall now render judgment on Furina's misrepresentation of herself as the Archon of Fontaine. As a human who knowingly deceived her fellow citizens, Furina is... guilty. We shall now turn to the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale to render the final verdict on the charge. According to the judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale, Furina is...
Well, what's wrong? What's the Oratrice's verdict?
No, the Oratrice also displays a guilty verdict.
Isn't that correct then?
However, the exact wording of the verdict is thus: the Hydro Archon, guilty, to be punished via the death sentence.
The death sentence?
That's actually one of the available sentences?
The one and only time the death sentence has been handed out at the court. And it's been given to the very person we've worshipped as the...
Furina's been sentenced to death by the Oratrice? We just wanted to use the trial to show her the seriousness of things so she'd tell us the truth.
This outcome is indeed quite strange. According to Fontaine's current definitions of justice, is this sentence really appropriate for the crimes that have been committed?
Yeah! Even Fauché wasn't sentenced to death by the Oratrice. You know, the real evil mastermind.
Indeed. Not only is Furina's sentence overly excessive, the very point of our trial today was also to prove that Furina has never been the... But now, the Oratrice seems to have deliberately invoked the title of the Hydro Archon.
Excuse me, if I may interrupt. Is the trial still going?
Fremine! You finally made it.
Mm-hmm. Any mission Father assigns to me.
Is that the first prophecy slate? Huh. So the knave privately arranged for Fremine to try and find...
I looked everywhere and finally found it at the bottom of the sea. But has the trial already concluded? Then... doesn't that mean I've come too late?
Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Fremine. Please allow me to review the record left on the slate. Traveler, I believe that you have already seen the other existing slates, and would like you to come here and...
Huh? So what do you see? What...
I believe I have now made sense of the Hydro Archon's crime. It has to do with Fontaine's lost history.
Archon just guilty of deceiving her people? Oh, wait, no, that's Furina, and we've already proven that she's not that. So when you say Hydro Archon, do you mean the real Hydro Archon we've been kinda talking about?
In truth, everything that you've encountered in Fontaine up until this point can be traced back to the... However, I'm uncertain as to how much sense they currently make to you.
Okay, let's try to recall the contents of... The first stone slate describes what you just said. It seems to show the previous Hydro Archon using her divine power. Does that mean that Fontainians are transformed Oceanids? Oh, Paimon wasn't expecting that. But if Oceanids can turn into humans, then the second stone slate shows Celestia floating in the sky and the Hydro Archon and her people worshipping it together. But the heavens still brought judgment down upon them. This must be the point when the Hydro Archon and the Fontainians were branded with their original sin. Does this mean that the original sin and the Hydro Archon sin are the same thing? The third slate shows the Hydro Archon sinking into the sea surrounded by many people. That reminds Paimon, didn't we also watch that? Well, the fourth slate is the prophecy the Fontainians have been talking about. We didn't believe that such a crazy disaster could happen at first, did we?
We know from the case of the serial disappearances of young women that Fontaine and the first stone slate tells us that long ago, the Hydro Archon used her power to turn Oceanids into... This might be the reason that Fontaine... Perhaps what is about to take place has all happened before. The true sin of the Hydro Archon that Nervalet mentioned, and the... It's not as simple as falling into the sea. When Navia fell into the sea, her consciousness was subjected to judgment. The stone slates show the people gathered around the Hydro Archon in the sea. Could that be alluding to the same thing? The prophecy from the stone slates found its way into society. But not many people. The fortress of Meropide was nearly flooded with primordial seawater, which we know can cause... If we hadn't dealt with it in time, things could have gone very bad.
They'll dissolve into the primordial sea but won't cease to exist. Their essence will flow in the seawater. The Hydro Archon was sentenced to death in court, shocking everyone present. Perhaps this means that her sin was actually Fontaine's original. Navia fell into the water inside those ruins, and she nearly dissolved. She was surrounded by the people of Poisson in a court within her consciousness. The eruption of the primordial sea at the fortress of Meropide was the surest sign that the prophecy was about. The stone slate's contents can all be verified by recent events. Huh? Oh, Paimon gets it now! But then it feels like we're going to have to share some truly shocking...
Let's hear them.
Incredible. Linny, did you hear that?
We're not real human.
All Fontainians were originally created by the late previous Hydro Archon. The evidence for that can be found in how only Fontainians could dissolve in primordial seawater, and how all the girls Vacher dissolved were also turned into Oceanids. Oh, and according to Navia, when she was about to get dissolved, she also saw everyone gathered around for a trial, all of them in the shape of Oceanids.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it follows from the content of the first slate that she probably angered Celestia, but that could also explain why the Oratrice judged the Hydro Archon to be guilty. It's to
The Hydro Archon's true sin was creating us?
And yet, after many hundreds of years, the Hydro Archon's creations have turned around to try to judge the Archon within the Opera Epiclese. The twists of history are often the most...
Yeah! Isn't the image here just like when Navia fell into the sea? So wouldn't it be trying to show the image of the Hydro Archon also falling into the sea once the prophecy has been fulfilled in the fourth slate? In the end, the people will all be dissolved into the waters, and only the Hydro Archon will remain weeping on her throne. Only then will the sins of the people of Fontaine be washed away. Did Paimon get all that right?
You've made some keen deductions. I must say, given how much you still don't know, it is impressive that you've already managed to connect so many pieces of the truth. However, while you were able to decode all the information on the slates, they've also been etched within it. When we were at the ruins, I tried to decipher the hidden information recorded in the slates. But since we only had 3, now that the slate collection is complete, I shall make another attempt to decipher.
Well? Did you get it?
I believe I should share this truth not only with you, but with all the people of Fontaine as well. I will try to briefly sum your hypotheses regarding the origin of Fontainians and the sin of the Hydro Archon were in the Fontaine of old. The previous Hydro Archon sensed the yearning of her Oceanid familiars for life on land. The Oceanids were enamored with the beauty and romanticism of human beings, and wishing to have those experiences for themselves, expressed to the Hydro Archon their desire to become of a similar. However, even though water as an element is intricately linked with the power of life, the Hydro Archon, as one of the not one to give in, she eventually found a way to create permanent humanoid bodies for her familiars by appropriating the power of this planet. She poured primordial seawater into the Oceanids' blood vessels, creating humanoid mimics in the process. But if Fontainians were to ever come into direct contact with water from the primordial sea, the power within their bodies would escape these artificial restraints and return to the sea. Of course, the Hydro Archon never received permission from the heavenly principles to create a new human race. And thus, the Hydro Archon and all of her creations came to shoulder the original sin of appropriating the power of the primordial sea. That is the true history of how the people...
So we were all Ocean?
That's way too much information for me. I think I'm just going to pretend that I never... Wait, but if that's the truth, we can't let the Hydro Archon be sentenced to death. After all, her only sin was creating us.
This really might be too much information for your regular Fontainian.
Alas, your hypothesis regarding the 3rd and 4th stone slates was inaccurate. The slates' respective positions are, in fact, correct. A key point of the visual on the 3rd slate is how all the individuals depicted in the... They have not been dissolved, which implies that the water depicted in this slate is... The nation of Fontaine is the nation of Hydro, as well as the nation of trials and justice. Instead of being the literal element, the water in the scene You may also recall Navia's experience. When she fell into the sea, her consciousness was... Therefore, the meaning of the 3rd slate is... that the people of Fontaine shall try the Hydro Archon at the court of justice. Yes, it refers to our present situation.
I think I'm following now. So, what you're saying is, in truth, everything we've done has happened exactly as the prophecy foretold.
What should we do?
Huh. No matter what, the prophecy will be fulfilled.
If that's the case, does that mean the scene in the fourth slate will also be fulfilled soon?
Traveler, I would like to point out another small fact about the fourth slate. You probably thought that the eruption of primordial seawater beneath the fortress of Meripede served as the surest sign that the prophecy was However, I believe that rather than being a sure sign, that eruption could in fact only be a small warning. As for the root cause of the catastrophe, I believe you've already encountered it once. This eruption was just a small warning of the things to come. We must find the root cause of the disaster.
It was both dream and...
If we're talking about a true culprit, that could only be that thing inside the primordial sea, right?
the truth, the original sin, the trial, and the root cause of the disaster.
So we've met it at last. I understand very well why it is chosen to make... That whale does not belong to Tevat. It is a monster that has traversed the stars, weeping all the while. It has been greedily consuming the energy from the planet's primordial sea, using it to grow. And once it has finished consuming all of the energy contained within the sea, its next step will be...
You said that when the Hydro Archon first created Fontainians out of Oceanids...
Precisely. That whale finds the blood of Fontainians nigh. Therefore, when it left the primordial sea, it decided to make its next stop a packed opera house full of food. Food in the form of Fontainians.
We just barely managed to push it back, right? In that case, won't it come back to target the people again?
That is correct. Indeed, it is more accurate to say that we should thank that Harbinger for buying us some time. Without him, the whale would have likely come onto land far sooner. From the way he looked, he must have been fighting the creature for quite a long time.
That battle maniac. We've always known that he had a special connection with that whale, but we definitely didn't expect it to help us. Anyway, now that we know that this whale is the actual cause of the disaster recorded in the prophecy, all we need to do to stop the prophecy would be to find a way to beat it up, right?
It is too late. It had already absorbed too much of the primordial sea's energy before we could notice it. Even if the entirety of Tevat were to be...
That's not We've already done everything we can, and we even found the true culprit. We've come so far.
Indeed. That's not how a grand performance should end.
I'll fight it to the end. No matter what.
So the prophecy will be fulfilled no matter what, huh?
The prophecy. Yes, what has been prophesied will be fulfilled. Just as prophecies are usually only the future as seen from the perspectives of the gods, ultimately, fate shall serve as your only guide, no matter what will happen in Tevat's future.
What's happening with the oratories?
I believe it is preparing to carry out the death sentence.
Furina! No, I still need answers.
You...
Sorry. That shocked expression on your face is just too amusing.
You are not Furina. Who are you?
Ah, the sweet sound of bewilderment. Marvelous. A sure sign that my attempt to deceive everyone was a resounding success. But to answer your question,
Focalor. Why did you deceive us?
Oh, that wasn't my goal, of course. Goodness, no. But I had to fool everyone else, too. The heavenly principle.
Deceiving the heavenly principles?
It's all because of that pernicious prophecy. Dreadful, wasn't it? Everyone doomed to dissolve. Fontaine condemned to be flooded. One was not amused. In fact, one was positively bemused. She knew full well that the prophecy would surely come to pass. And as one of the seven, she also knew full well that one defies the heavenly principles at one's peril. So yes, as you have no doubt surmised, it was a rather impossible situation that I found myself in. I spent a terribly long time mulling it over, alone on the ocean floor. And I was almost growing barnacles by the time I finally realized there was only one possible solution to this confounding conundrum. I had to outwit the heavenly principles, allow the prophecy to be fulfilled, ostensibly at least. I'm a genius, I know. I can only assume that's why Egeria chose me as her although, looking back now, it was hardly the inheritance one dreams of. Between the task of saving the nation, the quotidian duties of the Hydro Archon. But one can only play the hand one is dealt. I did not choose this. any more than I chose to be one of her Oceanid.
So you were also once one of the Oceanids, transformed into a human by Egeria's hand.
Yes, I was. I always dreamed of becoming human. And I still do, even now. In my eyes, to be human is to be part of the greatest opera ever known. After becoming a god, I separated my divinity from my body and spirit, leaving behind only a self that was as naive and bewildered as my past self on her first day as a human being. The me you see before you now is that divinity. And the human counterpart I left behind, I named Furina. She could feel joy, sorrow, and everything in between. She could be as vain and conceited, or as meek and vulnerable. Her strengths were of a kind only a human could possess. But in my eyes, Furina's humanity was what made her perfect. She was perfectly human and anyway, so then I cursed her. All part of the plan, of course. The plan to deceive the heavenly principles. Do you still remember the final scene of the prophecy? The Hydra Archon alone, weeping on her throne. In order that the prophecy might appear fulfilled, I invited Furina to be an actress, under the curse I placed on her. So long as I, Focalor's divinity, continued to exist, she could not die. But nor was she free to live her life in the Instead, she was forced to take the stage in the opera house, to embrace the role of leading lady, to forever play the... I suppose now you probably understand why your court is called the Opera Epiclese.
But Furina is only human, isn't she? Even though she has had a long life, her mind is no stronger than that of any other ordinary. I cannot begin to fathom what
It has indeed. And although she is, in a sense, me in human form, it's been and all along, she's been playing her part in the most unimaginably long, unbearably lonely, and agonizingly painful opera of all.